Welcome to this video. So in the previous video, we updated our CSS and changed up a few things. And in the end, this is what we came up with. And it's a pretty decent look compared to what we had earlier on. And so now for us to move this step forward so that we can have a way better implementation of this specific website, I'd like us to talk about CSS layout and positioning. But before we get to talk about CSS layout and positioning, we need to change up the structure of our website first. Then we can start writing our CSS later on. So to change up our structure, we're not going to change much, but we're going to just add a few things. And some of those things, especially division tags, we don't have the division as enough division tags where in the spaces where they're supposed to be in our website. So one of those places that we need to add a division tag is, for example, this part here where we have the nav. And then because we need to also add all the stylings in these sections, we need to give them classes and IDs that are going to help us in doing our styling and understanding the CSS positioning and layout. So to start with that, we're going to do a div here. I'm going to create a div here, and to give you a shortcut for when you want to add a class name, instead of just doing everything else from scratch, you can just say div, then use a dot and then the name of the class. Then this class, I'm going to call it container, and I'll just stack this closing div and I'll have it right after this. So now in this case, let me also just disable these completions here. Okay, we're good. And I'm going to also just move this again. Remember that we're just changing up a few things. Then this navigation, we're going to need to style it later on. So I'm going to give it a class, and I'll give it a class of I'll call it sticky hyphen nav, and that is going to be it for that. Let me see again. So now we're going to go to the main section. So what we're going to do, so in the main section, we have this ID of about me that says web developer in training. And then all these things that you can see here basically. And I'd like us to add a similar section right before the main. So usually the header, then the other section. So basically what I mean is, you see this before about me, there's usually a section that usually notice that is somewhere here. And I'll actually just open one of my websites here and show you what I mean. So if you go to this website and you see this section here, so this specific section here is a section that we're going to add, and then you can see the other about me and everything else follows after that. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll come here, and after header, I'm going to add a section, and I'll just add section. Okay, let me just type it in full. And then I'm going to give it a class of hero. So we usually call this, basically, we usually call them hero sections or hero page. That is where you have this main writing, this main section that you see on the first page, right after the navigation, as you can see there. Then I'm going to give it a div, and I'll just give this div a class of container as well. So remember, when we talked about classes, should be a full stop here. When we talked about classes, okay, let me just, okay, yeah, let's go like that. So in talked about classes, we mentioned that classes can be reusable. So that is why it is a class. So it's not like IDs that are unique, but classes, you can basically reuse them. And I'm going to have a H1 here. Let's say something like, it's a web developer. Remember, we're building a portfolio website. Then I'll give it a paragraph. In this paragraph, I'll just say something like, I create beautiful. Let's say I create beautiful. There should be a U here. So say I create beautiful and functional websites that help businesses grow, something like this. Then after the paragraph, I want us to also add just a simple button. So to add that, we're going to use an anchor tag. Then this is going to have a href, and I'll just have it as contact. So it's going to basically drop someone to where their contact is. Then I'll also give it a class, and I'll just give it a class of button. And you're going to reuse the same class of button across all the buttons so that you can have uniform buttons. And this is going to say contact me, like that. So if we save and look at our website, this is what we have right now, but it's going to look way better once we start styling it. Okay, so that is the section I wanted us to add. Now let's move on to the main section. In the main section, we need to give I'm going to give this main section a class as well. So I'll give it a class of container. And then once you give it a class of container, let's see. So this is going to be an ID of about, which is good. And because we have so many of these sections, I'm going to also try to see a way that you can change them a little bit. Okay, so this section of about, we're going to have a number of columns when we're talking about, or in the about section, in some of the other section. So I'll just give it a class name, and I'm going to give it a class name of two column. And again, for now, just follow along with what I'm writing as I'm adding these classes and IDs and the new sections that I'm adding, just so that later on when you write the HTML, I mean the CSS, it's going to make a lot more sense. Now, the other thing you can do is basically write the CSS and the HTML at the same time as you proceed. But I do prefer doing it like this so that we can just separate everything. So let's proceed. So we have the two column here. Then I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove this about me. Yeah, I'll just remove this h that says about me. I'll maintain the figure. Then we'll also maintain the image. The image's attribute is written correctly. The fig caption is also right. Then the paragraph here is, so what I'm going to do actually now here in the paragraph, this is where I'm going to add a div, right? So I'm going to add a div, and inside this div is where we're going to have this paragraph. And apart from the paragraph, we'll also have the h2 that we had before, and I'm going to just rewrite it here as about me. So if we write it like that, this is what we have right now. As you can see that h2 about me, and let's see something else. We have the div. Okay, I don't think we don't really need to give this anything right now. You can actually just extend the paragraph, maybe just add something more here. So we'll say something like, let's say when, okay, it should be when I'm not coding. I'll say when I'm not coding, I enjoy, let's say I enjoy hiking and reading and, let's say, exploring new technologies, or just new technology, like that. So okay, that should be enough content for this about me section. Then let's move on to the skill section. So this already has an ID. We can just keep it as is. This h2 of my skills can also remain. And then this is the part where I understood just add a div as well. So right now, look at what it looks like. So we have my skills and then HTML, CSS, like that. But I want this section to contain cards. So you basically have a card that says the name of the skill and a bit of description about that skill. So to achieve that, this is what it will look like. And what that means as well is that we're going to just get rid of this UL tags, like that. Then so it's going to have cards that looks almost like, so you see like these cards are written. So that's what I mean. So you have the name of the skill and a description below there. Okay, let's come here. So we're going to, for us to achieve that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a division, and this division is going to have a class of container. So because actually this is going to be a different container, we're going to style it differently. So I'll just call it skills container. Then inside of this div, we're going to now have, for us to achieve the styling of a card, each card is going to be in its own div tag. So we're going to have the first div. Then I'm also going to give it a class. Now it's going to be skill card. Remember the other one was skills. This is going to be skill card. And we're going to just duplicate this all across. And this is going to have, it's going to have a h3 for the name of the skill, and also a paragraph for the description of that skill. And I'm doing this so I can copy paste it, say like 3 times. I mean twice, so like that. So the first skill was HTML, and for HTML you can say created. So just describing the skill, we'll just say created. You'll just say created structured. Okay, what am I writing here? Yeah, creating structured websites. I'll just say something simple. Again, feel free to just make it a bit more descriptive. This one I'll have it as CSS. Then we'll say styled web pages. Nothing much. And apart from that, we'll have, let's say, problem solving. And in problem solving, we can say something like found efficient solutions to complex complex problems. That sounds like a bit of problem solving, yeah. And that should be it for the skills section. Then from the skills section, now we move to the project section. And for projects, we're also going to do the same thing as we've done before. So, but now the good thing about this is we already had a div. The only thing we'll do here, the first thing is we're going to give it a class, and we'll give it a class of, let's call it project container. Yeah, let's call it project container. And inside here now, instead of having this, remember, let me just show you what it looks like. This is what project container looks like. So it says projects, and then you have personal website, my website, which is a good aspect of a card that we need. But I want us to use article tags for this. And I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to have an article tag, and I'll also give it a class of project card, like that. So let's do this. So you have the first card is going to be personal website. Then the second card, I'm going to just copy paste this. Let's say the second card is something like, let's say coming soon. Should be like that. Coming soon. Then again, you can just have a description as you'd like. I'll just maintain this as, okay, let me just type in something. So say more, I'll share more projects, okay, that I am working on. So you have the project card all set up with the article tag, and this section for projects is done. Then we now have the contact section. So the contact section, we mostly did everything correctly. Especially the only thing that I feel we need to change here is just, and again, not the structure you've been writing for this section. You have the H2, then you have a div for everything. So what this is going to look like in design is, let me show you here. So you see an example is, you have, for example, you have this text. So this text is, for example, what you're referring as H2. Then each of these cards, each of them is inside of a div, but they have a bigger div that contains them. So this is the bigger div. Then everything else like article, that is now the smaller, that you have inside of this. Again, I hope you understand that in terms of the structure and how it boils down from, we have the bigger section that encompasses everything. Inside of that section, we have this H2. Then, and we also have this this entire division. Then this entire division contains multiple divisions inside of it, which in this case are 4 divisions. That is what we're trying to achieve with this design that we have here, or this structure that we have in the project section. So going to the contact section, we're doing a similar thing, but now we're going to add a div outside here. And then this div is going to have a class of, I call it contact container, like that. And I'm going to close it after form. Then let me just move tab this one level inside. That should be pretty good there. So that is contact section all done. Then we'll do the same thing for the footer section. Now you can make your footer as complex as you'd like, honestly. But let's first of all set up the simple structure for the footer. So for the footer, the first thing you're going to have is going to have a div. Let me just do this. Then we'll also give it a class, as you've already guessed it. I'll call it footer container. Then inside of this, we can have multiple sections of the footer if we wanted to. We can just maintain one footer if you'd like as well. So let's see what you can do here. Okay, I'm just going to maintain one, or just this what you have here. You can make it complex later on once you've seen what everything else looks like. So I'll just maintain this as is, but you can also have multiple sections in the footer down below. Okay, now our content is structured. I hope by this point you understand why it is important for us to structure the content the way we're structuring it. Because the way you structure your content is what is going to dictate how you're going to write your CSS and how it's going to look like. Right? You can have the best CSS code written, but if the structure is messy, you're going to have a hard time trying to maintain your website and just fix issues in case they do come up. So it is really, really important to have to do everything like I've mentioned here. So I'm going to just maintain this as is. And now we're going to look at our CSS. Now, when you talk about CSS, like I mentioned, and just to quickly look at layout and positioning in CSS. In layout and positioning in CSS, we talk about a few things. There are the display properties that CSS has, the way you position elements. So there are multiple ways that you can position elements. You can position them as either static or relative or absolute or fixed. Here's where we talk about floating elements, the flexbox layout, the CSS grid layout. And in case you want to create multiple column layout, this is where you do that. So let us talk about this. This is important. This is why it was important for us to use the division tags that we used here. Now coming to our CSS here, and I'm going to, let's see. Okay, what I'll do is let me just confirm whether we have any other div. Okay, we don't have div tags. We have these navs that are here, the footers, all good. So whenever you're writing your CSS, it is usually important for you to separate, basically classify the styles in the same sort of the way you've classified in your CSS in your HTML. So like having, let's say, the styling for skills before you have the styling for projects as like that. But right now, just because for demonstration purposes, I'm going to just have everything else right below here. And I want us to start with the display properties, right? Okay, let me also disable the CSS for this. I mean the completions. So for the CSS here, let's start with display. So I'm going to check the div tag, and in the div tag, there's the display which you mentioned in the previous video as well. We have the display property, and you can have displays in many ways. So if you give it a display of block, it is going to basically block your elements so that your elements take up the full width of what is provided. So right now, the element, it might not be as visible as you can see it here, but when you give it a display of block, it's going to take the full width of the space that you've given the specific element. Then there are many other things that you can do as well. There, for example, you can have a display of also inline. So they usually block. There's a display of inline. If you give it inline, again, when you come here, it doesn't fully show what that does, but there's this display of inline. And what it does is that it only takes up as much width as is needed whenever you're displaying something. You can also do the same thing for your images. You can also hide an element. So if you want to hide an element, you can just give it a display of none. Okay. Again, we've also seen what this does. Give it a display of none. And when the mentor gave it that, you saw every div already disappeared here. Right, so that it's important to understand this aspect of display. Apart from display, there's positioning and how you position your elements. So when you position your elements, there are also different aspects that also apply here. So like I mentioned, you can position your element as either static or relative, and there are multiple differences between them. For example, if you position your element as static, then it's going to basically default to the normal flow of the element. But if you give it a relative, it's going to be it's going to be basically positioned relative to the normal position where that element is. And then if you give it, for example, let's say absolute is going to be in a position that is relative to the closest element, the closest element that contains that element. Right? So for example, okay, let's see, let's try this here and see how I can apply. It will make, yeah, it will be a bit more clearer once we once we start styling the entire website fully. But if you give it a position of, let's say, let's say absolute, like that, to give it a position of a position of absolute, you can see how it has sort of messed everything up here. What it's basically doing here is it is positioning these elements, and if you look at the CSS, the HTML, it is positioning these div elements that you can see here, and it's positioning them to be a bit closer to the elements that contain them. So in this case, the ancestor element for the div is going to be this one here. So it's positioning it to be here, and it is doing the same thing to all the other elements to be a lot more closer. You can also give them a position of, apart from relative, there's a position known as fixed. So for fixed, you're simply fixing the element or positioning the element relative to the viewport. Ideally, the element is going to stay in place whenever you try to scroll. So again, right now it's just fixing elements where they are without changing anything there. Then you can also give them another position of sticky. I'm going to type here sticky. And a position of sticky, basically it's like fixed, which you've just seen, but now this it can be basically contained within the element where it is displayed. So for example, here we've gone back to the normal display that we've had, but all these elements, that all the div tags that we have, they've basically been fixed or sticked to the elements that contain them, so they can't basically be changed in position. I do hope that makes sense. So we're also going to see the others later on. For example, whenever you are writing your elements, you can basically float them around, right? So you can give them, like, float them either to the left or to the right if you wanted to. So let's look at our HTML and just pick something that is a bit that can make sense here. Okay. So we have, for example, we have this ones here. Let's see, I just want to pick something simple. Okay, actually we can just go with the div. If it won't work, we'll just pick something else. So what you do is you pick up, you just say float, and then you say whether you want it to float it to the left or to the right. So let me say float right, and hit save. You see how it has floated everything to the right, or the right side of the page. So it just basically moves them like that. Then you can also give it a float of left. So let's do left here. If you give it float left, it also basically floats the elements to the left. You can also clear any floats in case they are there. You use a style known as clear. So you just type in clear, and then you just make it clear. Okay, it should be clear here. Clear like that, not clear, but rather both. So it should be both. What this is going to do is it's going to basically clear all the floats in case there are floats that are applied before there. Then there is now my most favorite one to use is what we refer to as the flex layout. So the flex layout is basically when you want to arrange items in rows and in columns. That is when you use the flex layouts. In the menus, they can use a flex layout. There's the flex layout, and then there's the grid layout. So for example, we have like we have all this. Let's say we had the container. We had the container class used multiple times here. So I'm going to select the container class, and you can give it a display, and then you give it a display of flex. So if I give it a display of flex like that and hit save, you'll notice that it has basically arranged everything in a row and columns at the same time. And you can see how it has a bit of a structure into it. It is structuring every container. So for example, we have this div has container, this is another container, we had another container before, and it is aligning them in basically a single row, right? As you can see here, everything is in a single row. That is what the display of flex does. It's one of my most favorite because I can play around with it so many times. Then you can also give it a flex direction. So flex direction of the styles that you give it. So if you give it a direction of row like that, it still maintains the row. There's also, you can give it like row reverse. So for example, it's a row reverse. That's another direction. You see how it has reversed the rows to this side. You can give it a position, flex direction of column. So the display is in flex, but the direction is column. And you see this maintains it as it is. But apart from column, there's the direction of wrap. I know I'm going a bit fast here, but I hope you're getting this. For now, I'm just showing you what they do. Then you see this is the direction of wrap. You can also give it a direction of wrap reverse. And if you give it wrap reverse, it also maintains as you can see here. So let's see, we have reverse. Okay, yeah, that has worked well. Then let's go ahead and look at, okay, let me maintain reverse here. Okay, that should be good. Then there's also flex wrap. So you can give it a flex direction of wrap, but there's also flex wrap, right? So there's flex wrap that you can also just give it something else. So you can just give it wrap on flex wrap of wrap. It maintains everything as it was before. There's also justify content, which also helps a lot in many ways. So if you justify content, the space between, space around, and space evenly. Let me choose space between. If you do that, you see how it has spaced out the elements. Right? They're still in one loop, but there's a space between each of the containers, as you can see here. I mean, I think it's starting to make sense to you how you can come up with such a basically direction, as you can see from this page here. Apart from this, the other thing you can do is you can align items. So for example, let's align items. You can align, okay, should be aligned here. You can align items, and then you align items to the center. And when you come here, the elements are already aligned to the center. So we can't see much on this as well. There's also many other things that you can do from this, but this is basically it. There's also how you can work with the flex items. You can try to make them flex, grow. We're going to see these things as we proceed, but this is the most important part that I wanted you to understand, and how it works. So now we understand the flex layout. Now let's talk about the grid layout. Okay, so whatever you've learned about the flex layout, go ahead and practice it and just note everything down. You can always come back and watch this. Now we also have a flex, a display of grid. So a display of grid, it does what you usually call a two-dimensional layout. So it does a two-dimensional layout. So if I give it display of grid here, you'll see how it is maintaining what you had before, but it's giving it that two-dimensional layout. But there are many other ways that you can do here. So for example, you can let's say we select grid template rows. What the grid template rows is going to do is it's going to make sure that okay, let me just write in the details first. So we can give it 3 different rows, and then each row is going to have like a different height. Let's say that is what we want, right? So you can say we want we'll give them the we're going to give these rows some numbers to arrange them. So you give it 100 pixels auto and 100 pixels like this. If we save, you see how it looks like. It has given us 3 rows. This is the first row, this is the second row, this is the third row. But you can see there's 100 pixels between each of these rows, right? So it is 3 rows, but they have different heights. And this is what this does. You can also give it the 3 columns maybe. So this is okay, this is columns I'm explaining, not rows. This is columns that I'm explaining here. 100 pixels out of 100 pixels. These are columns. You can also give it rows. So I'm just going to use the same, but I'm going to switch here to rows. Then I hit save. This is what it looks like. As you can see, some of the other rows are basically overlapping each other in terms of the text. But you can see, for example, the hero page section that contains even this image here has been its height has increased. It actually has a height of about 100 pixels, as you can see here. So that is part of the grid layout. But there's so many things that go into grid layout that we can't cover all here. There's so many of those, but ideally, I believe we all have an understanding of what the grid layout does right now. So once you've done this, now I'd like us to talk about what I'm going to call, let's say, how to create multi-column layouts. So these are basically ways that we can create columns, right? We've seen how we can create columns with flex. We've seen a number of these things. So I'm going to just change this from grid, and I'm going to have a display of flex. And with the display of flex, also I'm going to save, and you can see how this looks like. Now you can always give this you can always give these columns a gap, and I'm going to give them a gap of, let's say, 20 pixels, and I hit save. And you can see how everything is spaced there. If I make it 200, just to show you how it can space them out, you can see it has spaced them out like really well. So I'll just maintain 20 pixels. Then once you've done this, you can also do something else. Let me see some of the classes that we have here. So we have column class, we have container, we also have a container class there. So I think I'll use probably the two column class that we have here just for demonstration. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to select the two column class, and then the two column class, I'm going to give it a flex of, it's a flex of 1, like that, and I hit save. So when you come here, let me just confirm to you what the two column class was. It was this section here that contains web developer training, about me, and everything else. And when you come here, you'll see that there's a gap that has been added. Or rather, there's a flex that has been added in terms of the column. So you can see the entire separation between this gap that is in here. Okay, let's go ahead and proceed here. You can also use grid to do a similar thing. Again, all you have to do is change the display here to grid. Then you can add a gap. You can maintain the gap of 20 pixels if you wanted to. Then add some other columns as well. So you can give it the number of columns that you want, the number of gaps that you want, all of these things. You can add them here. So let me just actually demonstrate. You can just say grid. Then this is what it looks like right now. Then it comes to columns. So how you do it in this case for grid is I'm going to give it a column count. So I'll just select column count. Then let's say column count is 3, right? Hit save. When you come here, you can see we have 3 columns. Then once you've added a column count, you can give it a gap. You can give it a number of things. Let me just show you something else. We have what we call the column role. You can give it a column. Okay, this is supposed to be a column rule. When you give it a column rule, you can specify like how you want the columns to look like. So if I give them 1 pixel, and I say 1 pixel solid, and give them a color, so let's say any color, like this is white. Okay, when you do that, you see this. Okay, let me just use something else, a different color. Let me use red. Hit save. You'll notice that there's this line that has been added here. This is a line that is separating a number of these things and how they look like. So this is what we refer to as a column rule. So basically adding a rule like that there. Okay, I do hope this makes sense up to this point. There are many ways that can go ahead and basically explain everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and now at this point, actually, what you can do is you can try and update your CSS with everything that you've learned to try and change the columns and the displays and the layouts of the website looks like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some styles to this container, which is basically our main layout. And I'm going to give our main layout, I'm going to give it like a max width. And I'm going to give it a max width of, let's say, 1200 pixels. Just for trials. Okay, as you can see again, you can see how the content has been sort of put in all together. So give it a max width of this, and then I'm going to give it a margin, and I'm going to give it a margin of 0 and auto, 0 and auto. And then I'll also give it a padding of the same. So a padding of 0 and auto, like that. Okay, let me try to be more specific on this. Let's say 20 pixels. So you can see how this looks like right now. So these are padding that has been added, the margin all good, and we also have a max width that helps us have a lot of sort of room to play with here. So once you have the HTML and the CSS set up, then you can try and basically write your own styles the way you'd like to have everything. Not we've covered every sort of single style that you need for you to transform this, add the cards, the structure is okay. Now it is just all up to you to find a way to, find a way to add the major stylings that you need to add to the website. Now, the other aspect that comes in after this is the aspect of how to make your website responsive, right? So to make your website responsive, there's a lot more that goes into making our website responsive, and part of that is adding what we refer to as media queries, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to cover media queries and how to make our website responsive in this sort of series. I'll leave that to you as a challenge, to just go and figure out how to make a website responsive. But for now, I think we're going to just try and style our website, see how we can make it a lot better than what we have, and yeah, let's actually see how we can go about that. Let's see how we can go about. I hope this video is not getting too long. That's why I'm taking some time to just decide whether we should continue with this thing or not. Okay, so let's just do it. I'm going to just switch this max width, and I'll just call it width in general and give it 100%. So I'll just say width 100%, so it will have the entire width of the web. As you can see, it is back to normal. The 1200 pixels was okay, but it was a bit too more a bit fixed, which wasn't cool. Then I'm going to leave everything else as it is right now. I mean, for the margin and the padding. And then just to go back to, we had selected the header before, so we have header and footer all selected here. So these ones, I'm going to give them a padding. So we have a padding of 20 pixels. So let's say 20 pixels by 0. That still does maintain what we had earlier, which is pretty cool. Okay, okay, let's just keep it as is. Or we just get rid of this. Okay. I think I need to take a break, but we'll just proceed until we finish. And then we have the main section. I'll just leave it as is. We have the navigation. Okay, I think we can just tell the navigation here. So I'm going to give the navigation. Let's say we have justify content to center, which is good. It has a padding of 0. Let's say, what is it? Okay, the navigation is actually okay. We can just maintain it as it is. Then let's move down. Okay, I think around here is where we have, after the navigation is where we have the hero section. So I'll just start styling the hero from here. Remember, we created the hero section, this new section here, hero. And then I'm going to give this hero section a padding, and I'll give it a padding of, let's see what you can do here. Let's say 30 pixels. 30 pixels by let's say 15 pixels. Okay, this is what it looks like. We can just leave it as that for now. Then I'm going to select the h1 that we have in hero, which is the main text, and I'll give it a font size, and I want to give it a font size of 2em, which by now I'm sure we understand what this means. Okay, so that's that is already okay there for 2em. And let's see something else. So we have the skills section. We can try to style the skills section if you wanted to. So the skills section and the project section are quite the same, right? If you come to our HTML, we have just Okay, it's actually here. So we have contact container, project container, and skills container. So project container and skills container are quite the same, and I want to style them together as well. So I'll just say project container, and the other one is skills container. Yeah, skills container, and I'm going to give them, we saw the grid template columns. I'll give it template columns of 1 FR, and this is what it looks like right now. And that's going to just add the maintain the columns. Then what else should I add here? I feel a bit confused on the styling that I want to add to this website. Okay, let's maintain it as it is. Okay, I'm a bit lost. Okay, I think what we can do is we can overhaul this whole thing. And okay, by this whole thing I mean just the entire CSS that we have, and then start styling this website from scratch, so that I can just have a bit of a better design, right? Because all this is that we've been writing before, at this point you understand the main CSS that we need for us to make this thing work. So this is what we're going to do. Let's start with styling and adding the let's add the basic the starting the margin, the padding, and setting them to 0. We're going to add margin to 0, and we're going to add padding to 0 as well. And then this is where we also add the box sizing. So we're going to give it a box sizing of border box, and let's switch and see. This is what our website looks like right now. So you can see it's starting to just come together, even if we've just started. So let's go ahead and move on to add a few things. So let's style the entire body first. And for our entire body, again, I already remember what you had written here, just in case you are wondering. But again, you can just keep on referring to see what you're doing. For the body, this is where we are adding the font. So here we're going to add a font family, and we can choose any font that we want. So let's see. I'm going to just choose this font here. Uh, I don't fully understand the entire font and how it's going to look like, but if we save, actually this is what it looks like. So I think it looks okay. Then let's give it a line height. Let's see. Let's give it a line height of 1.6. 1.6. Save. Okay, you can see the line height has been implemented or added there. You also give it color. Give the text some color. I mean the body, and I'm going to give it the color of I don't know how to describe this. I don't know how to describe this text color. Honestly, we'll just leave it as it is. Then you can also give it a background. And so now, when it comes to giving it a background, let me implement this, and we'll see what you do. It's best to just see what this does. Then I'm going to just give it let's say 135 DG, and I'm going to also pick a color. So let's say 667. Okay, I'm going to give it a shade of the 667 EA. Let's say double E actually. Okay, that's a shade of blue. I believe that is blue or purple, but I mean, whatever the color is, 0%. Then we're going to give it another color for the linear gradient. So these colors are going to be sort of fading, and you're going to see how they sort of fade really nicely. Then I'm also going to give it another color here. Again, almost a similar shade. I don't know how to describe these colors, but I usually use them. So we'll see what they come up with. So these are the colors. You can see how they look like. I mean, You can just compare it. They're similar to what the colors that I used here. So I'm just writing them as you can see. So let's just keep it as is. Everything will start making sense. Then I'm going to give it a minimum height, and I'm going to give it a minimum height of 100 view heights so that it can basically check the entire height that we have there. And then let's go to container. So container is one of the main classes that we had, right? So we have container here, and container there as well. So for container, we're going to give it a max width for each of the containers. And let's use the 1200 pixels that we used earlier. And then I'm going to also give it a margin. It's a margin of 0 and auto. Then I'm also going to give it a padding. It's a 0 and just 20 pixels like we did earlier. Okay, so this is what this looks like right now for all the content. Then again, you can also just change the max width and give it have it as 100%. You can just try that later on. Okay, now I want us to focus on the header part of this website and try to sell that header part really well. So if you come here, we have the header tag. We're going to use the header tag, and we have all these div tags, container class. We're going to use all of them. Let's start with the header tag. And with the header tag, we're going to give it a background. Now for the background, let's give it a background of, I'm going to select any of these colors. Let's say this one, but I need to choose a different shade of the color. So let's see, how does that look? Okay, it looks a bit funny, but okay, what about this one? Okay, no, that's not going to work. Okay, let me just lean to the bluish section of this. I don't even know whether this color is blue, honestly, so if you're laughing at me, that's okay. Okay, so we have, I'm going to maintain that for now for the header. Then now the thing about this, you can give it a backdrop filter. So I'm going to give it a backdrop filter, and I'll give it a backdrop filter of, I just give it a blur, and then a blur 10 pixels. So when you do that, this is what it's going to look like, right? I believe you can see sort of the change there. Then I'm going to give it a position of fixed, because again, it's the header, it doesn't not need to move. Then I'm going to give it some styling as well, just positioning. So I'll give it a top of 0. I'm also going to give it a width, so it needs to check the entire width that it has. I'll give it a width of 100%. Okay, so now it's checking the entire width, as you can see there. And I'll give it a Z index, and I'll give it a Z index of 1,000. Now, I want you to go ahead and Google what a Z index does. I'm going to mention it to you, but I want you to Google. You can already see what it does there, but just Google out what the Z index does. You're going to learn a lot more there as well. So I'm also going to give it a box shadow. I'll give it a box shadow, and I'll have the shadow as, I'll start with 0, 2 pixels, and 20 pixels, then give it a color. So let me try to play around with some RGB values. So let me play around with some RGB values. So I'll just say 0, it's a 0 and 1. How does that look like? I don't even know what color I've chosen here. I'm just choosing. Okay, let's make this 0.1. That would make much more sense. So when you do that, okay, so we have the header, it's picking this. So it's not really showing the box shadow, but if you try and lean to the right side, it sort of shows, but like faintly, I think. But let's just maintain it as it is for now. Then let's see. Okay, I'll just maintain it like that. There's no need to make it a lot more complex. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the header, but there's the container class that is inside the header section. And I'm going to give it a display of flex. So when I give it a display of less, you can see now the name is on the left side and the skills are on the right side, which is what I wanted. Then I'll give it a justified content of space between, so that it's space between the two, and you can see that separation there as well. And I'm going to align, okay, should be in a new line. I'm going to align items to the center, and this is what they do. Basically, let me just show you this. When you can see right now the this name is already at the top here. When you align them to the center, it basically positions everything at the center of the container. So it says center. You can see how it has dropped, and it's now exactly at the center. The same happens to this other side as well. Then apart from aligning them to the center, you can give them a padding. Say padding should be a, so I'm going to give it a padding of, let's say, 1 rem and 20 pixels. So okay, that's good. You can see it has added some padding around, especially this part here is a bit more visible. Then I'm going to now go to this h1, which is the name. I don't think that name needs a lot of styling, or at least I don't want to give it a lot more styling, but let's see what you can do with it. I'll just make it try to make it a little bit better. So I'll just select this h1, and I'm going to give it, let's say I increase the font. Let me give it a font size. I'll give it, okay, what has happened here? Let's go ahead and give it a font size, and I'll give it a font size of 2 rem. And okay, let me make it to em. Okay, still sort of maintains the what it had. Okay, let me just confirm it is a, okay, it is a h1, so we're good there. Okay, let's try 1. Okay, yeah, that's small enough, so let's just keep the 2. The 2 should be fine. Then we can also give it a font weight. I want to make it a bit bolder, so I give it a font weight of bold. Okay, that sort of remains like what we had before. Then okay, let's do this. Okay, let's actually just leave it as it is. I don't want to just spend too much time on this section, honestly. Let's go to this ul. It has a class of sticky nav. Then there's the list. Let's just go ahead and style those ones. So I'm going to do sticky nav, then I want to style the ul there. Okay, it should be ul. And in this, I'm going to give it a display, and you already know display of lex is going to do the job. So it's the ul tag, and then with the display of lex, it should be able to align these things. Okay, let me remove the list style first. So I'm going to give it a list style of none. It's going to get rid of the bolds. Why is it not picking up on this? List style of none. Oh, okay, I see. It should be sticky here. I should have said sticky, right? Yeah, sticky nav. Save. Okay, now it is working. I was a bit worried there. And then I'm going to give it a gap, and I'll give it a gap of 2 rem, and you can see the gap has been added. Then we can also, there's a few things that you can do here. I think we'll do that with the anchor tag. So I'll select the sticky nav, and remember it has the a tag. I think it still has the a tag as we gave it. Yeah, the a tags are still there. And here, the main thing I want to do is give it a text decoration. And I want to give it a text decoration of none, because okay, I think you've already seen it has removed the underlines. That's what I wanted to remove there. Then you can give it a color if you would like to. You can give it a font weight, a padding. What else can you give this? There are many things you can do. You can give it a border radius for these buttons. You can do a lot of other things. For now, I'll just maintain it like that. Again, I'm trying to just rush a little bit to save on time as well, so we don't have a tutorial that is too long. And the other thing I want us to do is let's move to the hero section. Let's see. Yeah, we have the hero section here. Let's try to style that one and make sense of the rest of the information. So we're going to go to the hero section, and in the hero section, I'm going to give it a color. For the text, I'm going to give the text a color of white. Okay, so it is already pushed up there, but we can easily change that. Let me first text the line to center. Then I'm going to give it a padding. I'll give it a padding of 150 pixels by 0 by 100 pixels. Okay, you can see it has already moved it down. That's what I was talking about. So we have the padding, and then I'll also give it a margin top. It's a margin top of 80 pixels. Okay, that looks good. Let's give it a position of relative. So we talked about this positioning. And then I'm also going to give it a overflow of hidden. So for overflow of hidden, it doesn't fully show right now, but it will show once the page is a bit longer, more than a single page, as you can see right now. Rather not like once it's just the screen's a bit bigger here, so it doesn't show what happens there. Then let's see what else can we add here. Let's style the text. So it has the h1. Let's say hero h1. Then this h1 text is the one that says web developer. I want us to give that text font size. Okay, should be font size of 4. Yeah, I'll give it 4 rem, and you can see now it's a bit bigger there. Apart from font size, you can give it a margin. Let's give it a margin bottom to separate with the rest of the text of 1 rem. You can see the separation there as well. And let's see, what else can we give it here? Okay, let me just maintain this. I think this should be good for now. There are many other sort of things you can do to just make it a lot more beautiful. Then now let's move to the paragraph. So hero paragraph. So the paragraph is this text that you see there. And for the text on the paragraph, I'm going to give it a font. Okay, I've tried to save when I shouldn't be doing that. So I'll give it a font size, and I'll also increase this font to, let's say, 1.5 rem. Should be a bit bigger than it was before by half. Then apart from the font size, I'll also give it a margin bottom to ensure the separation with the contact me there, as you can see as well. And I'll give it of 2 rem. Okay, you can see the separation works. Is there anything else you can add here? Okay, let's leave it as it is for now. Then let's see, contact me. Let's confirm. Contact me is it's an a tag that has a class of btn for button. So we'll select that class of btn, the button. To sell the button, we're going to give it a display of inline block. And once we save, you can see nothing much shows in terms of the change. But let's see, give it a background. It's a background of white. Then you can see now it's starting to take shape. Then let's give it a color. So this is going to be color of the text. I'm going to just maintain this color that we used earlier on. Then you can see there the color and padding. Padding, of course, is important here. I'll give it 15 pixels by 30 pixels. So you can see as well 15 pixels 30. You can see the full change right there. I'm going to give it a desk decoration of none so that you can get rid of that underline, which is working well there. Let's give it a border radius. So border radius basically just makes the edges smoother, and I'll make it 50 pixels. So you can see it's a bit smoother there right now. Then you can give it a font weight. Let's see, font weight of bold. Font weight of bold, awesome. Now contact me is a bit bolder. I mean, you're starting to see how this thing is taking shape. Apart from the font weight of bold, let's go ahead and should you do something else really? You can give it a shadow, but I don't want to give it a shadow right now. It just feels a bit, for now, we can just leave it as it is. So that is it on the button. Yeah, maybe one thing we could add is when someone hovers over the button. So just button, and when someone hovers over it, we can, yeah, we can actually add a shadow when someone hovers over it. I'll just change the background for now. Let's say we just change the background to let's say a color here. Yeah, let's give it like an F8, F9, FA. This is just a shade of white. So when I hover over it, you can see there's a bit of a change. Okay, let me just pick a different shade here. So when I hover over it, okay, that's a bit, okay, let me just come here, save. Okay, you can see how it changes, basically that hover, that's what I mean. But again, just pick a color that best suits what you're trying to achieve with your website. Then let's move to the main section. Okay, you can see how everything else is taking shape. Let's move to the main section here. So for us to style the main section, we're going to start with the main tag. And for the main tag, I'm going to give it a background. Give it a different background. Let's give it a background of white. You can see how the white pops up immediately. And then let's give it a margin as well. So we'll give it the similar margin as before, auto, as what we did with the general, the body, I think. Then we'll give it a border radius. Let's give it a border radius of different, so give it 20 pixels, 20 pixels, and then the other one is going to be 0, 0. We can see it as given a border radius up here, but down here it's nothing has been added. So that's what we mean. Then let's give it a position. I'll give it a position of relative. Then I'll also give it a Z index. I hope by now you've Googled what the Z index meant. I'll give it a Z index of 1. And then I want to give it a shadow for now as well, but you can also give it a shadow here. Then I'm going to select the section tags because they're mainly on this part. I'll give them a padding of, let's say, 80 pixels by 0. When you do that, you can see the separation that happens inside here. Then I'll also give them a border bottom so that they can also separate with everything else. I'll give them a border bottom of 1 pixels, and I'll make it solid. Then I'll give it a color. Okay, so you can see the border bottom that has been added here, just a faint color, which is, again, I think it's okay. Then what else should we do here? Yeah, let's see here. So I think we're going to remove one border bottom, and to do that, what you do is you for the section, just select the section. Then it has this element of last child. Then if you give you can just select last child, and for the border bottom, you'll give it a border bottom of none. So what this is going to do when you come here, it basically gets rid of the last border bottom that you can see there. Again, you can always hover over these things to see what they mean. And then let's go to the H2s. So H2s are the titles that we gave each of the sections. Note that you can see these divs have H2s. Those are the ones that I'm referring to, the second level headers. I'm going to give this H2s a font size. Let's say we just double it and increase the size again, so you can see the size has increased right there. Then we can give them two more things. Maybe let's say we give them like a margin bottom, again for obvious reasons, to rem, just like before. You can see it has separated everything nicely. Then we can just text the line as well to center. Text the line. Okay, what am I doing here? text align to center, and you can see looks nicely as well. So those are the only two things I want to add to this h2s. And then let's come back here and see. Okay, so there's this main section, this first section that has a class of two column and two, because it has a figure and it also has div. And this to be in a display of like a grid. So what I'm going to do is okay, I just want to copy that. Then I'm going to have it here, and I'll immediately give it a display of flex. Then when I do it, you can see we have the image on the left and the text on the right, which is what I wanted to achieve here. And I'll also give it something like, we saw the grid template, right? So we saw the grid template columns, and I'm going to give it that, and I'll give it a 1FR and 2FR. And you can see how it sort of separates everything, and I like with the columns. Then apart from that, I'm going to give it a gap. A gap is important, I mean, for obvious reasons again, for RAM. And okay, that's a nice relative gap, and I'll align the items to the center. Ooh, center. Hit save, and that's good. Then I'll go to the individual items now. So this, I think this is the one that we gave figure, or is it the text? No, it is the image that has the figure tag. So I'll select that figure tag, and I'm going to give it a text line of center as well. So it's going to align the image and everything within this tag. Then I'm going to select the image that is in the figure. So I'll just select figure and img tag. And with this, I'll give it a border radius. Let's see. I'll give it a border radius of 50%. So this again, it's an image, it's going to make it round like that. Then I'll give it a border. Let's see, I'll give it a border, and I'll give it a border of 5 pixels. I'll make it solid, and I'll give it one of the other colors that we had before. So I'll give it this same color actually. Okay, so you can see the border around the image. That's the nice thing that I wanted to add there. And then apart from this border, let's see, okay, I don't want to get into a lot of other things. Let's say you'll just leave it as it. I think it's a lot more beautiful as it is right now. Then when someone hovers over the image, you can also add a few things. You can like have the image transition. You can just transform the image and give it a shadow whenever someone hovers over it, so they can just notice some sort of a change happening. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'll just leave it to you to do. The other thing is this caption. You can also style this caption. Give it like a margin top to separate these two. You can also italicize it. I think that's the main thing that I should do for that one. It had the style of fig caption, I mean the tag fig caption. I'm going to, let me just apply the margin top that I was saying, just to separate everything of one RAM. Then I'll give it a font style, and this is going to be italic. Okay, so it should be font style. I don't know, I selected size style of italic. Okay, awesome. Now it is italic. You can also give it a color if you want to, but I'll just leave it as is. Then let's move to the skills container. So remember, we want this to be some sort of cards, and to do that, I'm going to select the skills container. And in this skills container, I'm going to give it a display of grid. And after giving it a display of grid, so skills container, just to confirm that I wrote it correctly, I'm going to give it a gap. Give it a gap of, let's say, 2 RAM. And then you can notice the gap that has been added between the two. And I'll just maintain it as it is right now. Then we'll go to the individual elements. So the skills, we'll give it the skills card. skills card. Was it skills card or skill card? Let's see. We called it skill. Okay, skill card, not skills. So skill card, right? Yeah, skill card. Good. So in the skill card, we can go ahead and let's see. I'm going to give it a padding first. I'm going to give it a padding of 2 rem. Let's see how that changes. Okay, you can see the change is a bit bigger right now. Then apart from that, let me give it a border radius as well. I'll give it a border radius and I'll make it, let's say, 15 pixels. Okay, that doesn't show really right now, but we'll just leave it as it is. I'll align the text to the center. So text align center. Yeah, that has worked. And I'm going to give it a border. I'm going to give them a border. And I'll make it 2 pixels and I'll make it solid. And I'll make the border just transparent in color. So there's a border around it, but it is transparent. I'll give it a position of relative and overflow of hidden. Okay, so we're good with that. Now this is what the skill card look like right now. You can just try to make them a bit better. Okay, I think I should just give them a background. Okay, what am I doing here? Okay, I think I'll just give them a background, not background color, but just background. So I'll select background and I'll give them a line gradient. Same thing as we did before. Let's select, where was that? Okay, yeah, this one. I just want to select the same thing that we did here. And where are we here? I'll just put it in there. And this is what we have now as cards. That's all I wanted to achieve there. Then is there anything else really? Now you can see the margins, everything has already been added, and the border radius. And you can have something like when someone hovers over the cards, they change a little bit, but for now we'll just leave it as it is. And then there's the text. You can also style the text. I don't want to get into styling the text, honestly. I think you can just move to the project container right now. So project container. For the project container, I'll also give it a display of grid, and I'll give it grid template columns as well. And I'll just have it as repeat. Okay, repeat. So for this, you can just have it as auto fit, auto hyphen fit, then give it a min max. So this is like a min max scalar. And then here you can specify the pixel. So if I give something like, let's say 350 pixels and 1 fr, and then I come here, you can see how it has basically switched everything. This is what you mean. You can see it already has the gap already added, everything written nicely. Then I'll give it a gap of 2 rem as well, just to make it a lot nicer. Okay. The other thing is you can, because these are project cards here as well, so we can also style them a bit the same as we did before with the skill card. Okay, let's just do this project card, and I'll give it a background. I'll give it a background of white, and padding for the card of 2 rem. And then I'll give it a border radius of 15 pixels. That should be nice. I'll give them a shadow we'll see everything all together of 0, 10 pixels, 30 pixels maybe. Then you can give them a color. So I'll give them an RGB value of, I'll even just choose that one. Okay, so you can see how the cards have appeared. Again, same as the ones before. The styling is the same, but we changed the background and added a box shadow a little bit there. I don't think there's anything else I want to add here, honestly. I can add a border as well if I want to, but I'll just leave it as is. Then, is there anything else? I think the contact section. Yeah, we'll just style the contact section. Yeah, so let's move to the contact section. So in the contact, we have I think we call it the contact container. Let me confirm that quickly. This footer container. Yeah, the contact section, we have the contact container. And is there much that you can do with the contact container? I think you can maintain it as it is actually. The only thing I'll do here is I'll style the form. Let me just get rid of this and style the form. So for the form, I'll give it a background color. Not background color, but just background. I'll give it a background of, let's see. Yeah, I'll just give it the same shade that we used before. It was a shade of white. The one with F8. It was F8, F9, F8, F9, FA. Yeah, it's a shade of white. So that maintains as the background there, white or gray. Then I can give it a padding of, let's say, 3 rem. Then I'll give it a border radius of, let's say, 20 pixels. And then I'll also give this one a box shadow. So I'll just copy this and paste it here. I'll give it the same box shadow. So it appears like a card, but the individual items need to be styled. So we have the name, the label, all these things need to be styled for them to appear as they should. And I think I'm going to leave this to you to finish it off. Yeah, so I think at this point, because what you'll notice from everything that we've done up to this point, it's a lot of repetition. Once you've sort of like gotten the hang of everything, it's a lot of repetition. Here you just need to style these forms the same way we styled them earlier, but now of course they're not going to go like edge to edge because you've already fixed everything around here. So you can even change this background color that we have here and make it a lot better so that it's not too distinctive, as you can see right now. I removed this borderline that we had it up here. Yeah, I'm going to actually just leave it to you to just try and make this look a bit better. I mean, it shouldn't be too hard for you to just figure out how to do this thing next. So just style the form and then style this button. Just make it, you'll style everything together. In this footer, all you need to do is just move it to the center. As you can use the same sort of styling that we used up here for the hero section, but now for the footer. But of course, don't make the text as big into the button there. Okay, that is going to be it. We've been able to build, as you can see, a really beautiful website with HTML and CSS. And I hope you've been able to learn a thing or two here that you're going to use in the next websites that you're going to build. This, once you've added all the styles and changed a few of the things that you can see here, because I was doing this on the go, just trying to apply. I don't have a specific design that I'm following. But with this, you can be able to make it a lot better and have it look like this, right? It's very easy for you to make it look like this very easily. Actually, I'm going to show you another one. So if you click on Discover Classes, we have this other section here that I created. This is just for technical writing. And you can see how all this looks like here. Again, you can be able to create all these. As you can see, the stylings are quite the same. Like once you've mastered how to create this, you know how to create these cards, there's not much difference with how you can create the following cards and these cards and every other card that you can see that comes right after this. So you can just use this as your anchor or sort of reference when you're building. Just go to the website, it's called leadschool.com, and you can select the technical writing aspect or this one as well here, and try to use it as a reference. As you can see, there's similarity between the two, just that you need to be add a few more styles for each to make sense on what you've just built. Okay, that is going to be it from me for today. Thank you everyone for joining this HTML and CSS class that we've been doing and all the sessions. And I look forward to seeing you in the next web development as we're going to be looking at. So next we'll start looking at JavaScript, right? So, but for now, I'd like you to just spend the next week or so trying to practice what you've built here, build a few more websites and see what you come up with. Try and make them a lot better. Then after that, we'll get started with JavaScript. Okay, cheers, and I'll see you in the next one.